I do want to let you know we are just getting word into us here at CNN that the Supreme Court has now weighed in, granting President Trump's emergency appeal, so to temporarily halt the judge's order that the administration pay full SNAP benefits. David, we heard from you on that one. You said that they should follow. Congressman, what do you make of this from the court?
All right, well, huge breaking news out of the Supreme Court tonight as the Trump administration has just scored a temporary legal victory when it comes to the drama over funding SNAP benefits, aka EBT and food stamps, amidst the government shutdown. And certainly we should hope that temporary is all they're going to need. But after all, we don't really know how long the Democrat temper tantrum lasts. So let's see what ends up happening here. But nonetheless, I do want to really quickly remind people of the ridiculous timeline in terms of how we got to this point, okay? Because this all started when, first of all, the petty and childish Democrats shut down the government. And so the Trump administration responded by basically saying, okay, starting November 1st, we are going to stop paying out SNAP benefits because, after all, Congress is the political institution that provides government funding. There is no more government funding, and so we're going to have to start cutting that stuff off. So Democrats responded by ironically blaming Trump and convincing all of their voters in the November election to do the same when, of course, they were the ones who shut down the government. And so it was always a ridiculous dialogue to begin with, but then that was followed up by woke judges stepping in at the federal level and legally mandating the Trump administration to pay out the SNAP benefits, to which I first of all ask, how? With what money? Congress is not even giving the funds to pay the SNAP benefits, right? But the Trump administration responded by saying, okay, in response to this judge, we will pay out partial SNAP benefits, a little bit of what we can. And after all, I would genuinely support, hey, if there's some emergency funds you can find for, say, the genuinely disabled, the elderly, okay, fair enough. But to the millions of welfare grifters across this country, sorry, no more steak and lobster this month. Blame the Democrats. They shut down the government. But of course, that woke judge responded to the partial payment and said, no, you're still wrong. Trump administration, you have to pay out 100% of SNAP benefits all by November 7th this month, or else you're breaking the law. You're in contempt of court. To which I first of all say how ridiculous this was, right? To the judges, you are a judge. You are not a politician who writes the law. You are not an activist who is simply in the position to fight for your political ideology. Your job is to interpret the law. And so I first of all ask, what federal law on the books anywhere says that in a government shutdown, the president still has to find some type of emergency funds or take out a loan or do whatever the heck, right, for the SNAP program? It simply doesn't exist. These people are making it up as they go along, right? It's always been ridiculous. Of course, the Constitution, by the way, gives the power of the purse to who? The Congress. Congress is generally supposed to control the funding. If there's no funding, Judge, how is the Trump administration out of line for saying there's no freaking funding? And of course, the greatest irony to all of this that I find, guys, is that, remember the Doge efforts? Remember how many times when it came to USAID or other government programs, agencies that the Trump administration was trying to slash, or the firing of federal workers and all these things, right? Did woke judges basically step in and say, no, you cannot do that without the permission of Congress? Essentially, the argument, the legal case that they were trying to make in the name of so-called liberal, legal ideology, but I guess it's not even an ideology at this point, right? Was that, well, you cannot do these things without the power of Congress. In other words, Congress has to approve the president moving around funds. We saw that a million times. And yet now, in a totally inconsistent manner from these, we're supposed to see them as valid judges, right? They're now turning around and saying, no. Actually, the president is legally required to move around money and pay out money without the approval of the Congress. Guys, do you see what is going on here? Okay, we're dealing with a completely ridiculous judicial insurrection. These people are not even attempting to make it seem like they are making their rulings on any kind of legal principle or consistent interpretation of the law. It's literally just like, oh, so I like SNAP because I'm a libtard? Okay, President Trump, you have to pay out SNAP. Why? Because I said so. No legal justification. I just freaking said so, right? But I don't like you. I don't like cutting USAID. I don't want you to cut the Department of Education. Okay, I'm going to make a completely opposite ruling on an opposite logic. But why is that? Because I'm a freaking Democrat. That's all there is to it. So nonetheless, that's why I say this is a very big victory today out of the Supreme Court. Ironically, it was actually handed down by Ketanji Brown Jackson of all people. But we'll tell you about it, guys. First, though, do us a favor. If you enjoy our content, make sure you hit that like button down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. That's the best way to support our work. It also ensures that you can stay up to date with all of the latest news and coverage. And with that said, okay, so here you have the headline. The Supreme Court is stopping the order requiring that SNAP benefits be paid. The Trump administration filed a last-minute appeal with the Supreme Court on Friday to block a court order requiring the government to provide full SNAP food stamp benefits to millions of Americans by November 7th. Now, the administration filed that request after the Boston-based U.S. First Circuit Court of Appeals, which, by the way, I believe did this today, declined to intervene. The USDAA had already been working with states to get money to the recipients quickly. Shortly after the administration's request, the Supreme Court granted it. The High Court said the administration doesn't have to promptly pay full food stamp benefits for now in a last-minute but temporary order that leaves in limbo the 42 million Americans who rely on food stamps, which we've said for a very long time is such a ridiculously high number. You mean to tell me that in a country where, relative to, say, the 1960s, right, you know, housing costs have gone up, a lot of cost of living has gone up, but one thing that's actually gone down over time in contrast, and when you're weighting in, right, inflation and median salaries and all those things, is the cost of food. But somehow the EBT program keeps increasing. Why is that? Because, you know, I mean, you have 10%, again, you know, genuinely disabled elderly. Most people are just taking advantage of the freaking system, and it's incentivizing poverty, and all of these things are, of course, true. But, you know, again, okay, so even if you're a court that's going to try to sit here and say that you have to pay out the food stamps by November 7th, right? They literally gave Trump like a week to say, okay, yeah, you're in a government shutdown. Yeah, you have no clue how you're even going to find the money, but, you know, pay it out immediately or else you're breaking the law. It's not even freaking reasonable, right? Not, oh, throughout the month, by November freaking 7th, you know? And by the way, another question I would like to ask here, okay? Because we get it, the Democrats love SNAP because that's how they create a dependency program, because a bunch of their voters basically get addicted to the metaphorical government cheese, or I guess in some cases the literal government cheese, and then, you know, you can't hook them off it. They're going to keep voting to continue their government cheese, whatever, fine. But where's the temporary order or the mandate from a judge to say, fund the FAA and the air traffic controllers? After all, it's Thanksgiving, okay? Americans of all social classes need to fly home or go visit their family. And you're endangering a bunch of lives, by the way, because after all, right? I mean, you don't have a lot of air traffic controllers, the pilots, all that stuff. Like, you could see God forbid, you could see that, right? But no, they don't freaking care about that. What about the military, by the way? Where's the emergency order saying, hey, you have to pay out the military. You have to try to find the funds for it, or you can unfreeze whatever emergency rainy day thing. They're not doing all of that. Notice how this only comes down on the order for their freaking program that they know their voters are massively frauding, but we're supposed to have respect. Respect the court ruling, guys. No, it's insane. It's totally freaking ridiculous. But nonetheless, the temporary pause issued by Ketanji Brown Jackson, known as an administrative stay, right? It's basically that temporary restraining order or injunction, you could call it, gives an appeals court more time to fully consider Trump's request. After all, it seems like you should at least consider it. I have no idea why the Boston appeals court basically just said, we're not going to consider it at all, right? And the administration has said that it could only make partial payments, but not transfer another $4 billion to these states by Friday evening. I mean, yes, after all, guys, how do you even feasibly expect them to do that? Like, how exactly do you logically, logistically, practically expect to move $4 billion worth of government benefits in the span of like 7 days without there being massive errors and I guess cases of unintentional fraud, although maybe that's exactly what the Democrats here are pursuing. But, you know, these people are so freaking disingenuous after all, because they're the very ones constantly crying, oh, the food stamps, Trump is cutting them off. And by the way, again, that's what they told their voters in the election. And you can clearly tell to a degree it actually worked. We broke that down, right? The poorest counties in New Jersey, for instance, flipped super blue because the Democrats just said, oh, EBT, right? And yeah, I get it. I totally understand. It's the Democrats' fault for shutting down the government. But it's a double-edged sword because this is basically the nature of a welfare state. And this is, I would argue, the entire reason why FDR and LBJ set up the system as they did, which is they knew they would create permanent generations worth of dependency, right? These voters, you think they care? Do you think they're even smart enough to comprehend, like in the head, how the government works or what the filibuster is or what a government should? No, they don't know and they don't freaking care. All they know is, I don't got my food this month, right? That's all it is, okay? Or the food stamps. I don't got my steak and lobster this month, right? And then they just show up and say, okay, Donald Trump's the president. Well, then I'm going to vote against him, And so I frankly, I don't know what to do about that. It's sort of a inherent issue, I guess you could say, with quote unquote democracy, at least a democratic system where this many people are participating, right? Because we have higher voter participation nowadays in America than say we did generations ago. And it's like, yeah, you can be the party who offers free stuff. You put the free stuff in effect. And then who cares if the free stuff is bankrupting the country as we speak? Because all these entitlement programs are just totally going to make the national debt explode even more. But whatever, right? If the other party says and comes along and says, hey, we want to reform the system. By the way, we genuinely want to help the people who are on EBT and food stamps that are just grifting off of it because we want to get you off of that so you go and actually build a life, right? Instead of incentivizing poverty or making that just comfortable to live in, hey, how about find a job? How about find some fulfillment? How about move upward in life? But of course, no one wants to do that. Because it's kind of like quitting a drug, right? It's the withdrawal process. At the beginning, it's hard. And no one's willingly going to want to do it. Same is true, right, with the government benefits. So, this is just the situation they've created. They're holding us hostage. And then when we even attempt to maybe do something or do a reform about it, they literally cry out in pain as they strike us, right? They blame us for the fact they shut down the government. And of course, what else have we heard Democrats screaming about, right? How about the federal workers? Or as I brought up, the air traffic controllers, law enforcement, the military, right? Oh, it's so horrible and the government shutdown we created that these people are not getting paid. Hey, Republicans and Donald Trump, come to the negotiating table. Well, guess what? Actually, as a matter of fact, it was just today that the Senate Republicans introduced a bill that would, guess what? Pay federal essential workers, the ones they care about, right? Law enforcement, air traffic control, and the military during the shutdown. After all, again, Thanksgiving, okay, a lot of air traffic, flights are getting freaking canceled, right? I mean, maybe don't let your stupid Obamacare grandstanding ruin, the holidays for a bunch of freaking Americans. And what did Senate Democrats do? They blocked that as well. By the way, this would be very telling. Republicans should actually introduce a bill that says we're going to fund EBT and food stamps and SNAP, and watch as the Democrats strike that down too, and then claim it's Trump's fault that there's no SNAP. These people are so insufferable. I'm so tired of it. And yeah, you can see it right there. So you got Amy Klobuchar on the right-hand corner, alongside Kirsten Gillibrand and another Democrat senator, just chilling, right? The government shutdown they claim is so serious. Okay, millions are starving is what they're telling us. And then, all the air traffic problems, flights are getting canceled all over the country. You're ruining basically everyone's holiday. And they're just sitting there laughing, chatting up, having a good time, clearly working so hard. And when it comes actually to the bill that would say, okay, at least give people their Thanksgivings, right? The Democrats voted no on it. You can see, remember, you need 60 votes for a budget bill, thanks to the lovely filibuster. It's only 53 yes votes. I presume that is basically the 53 Republicans you have in the Senate, and the Democrats all got together and said no. Frankly, I think the Republicans should just introduce a bill to fund EBT and SNAP. That'd be really funny, actually. I know, I'm not saying that seriously, but watch if you did that. And the Democrats said, no, we're not going to fund EBT and SNAP. But then, of course, they would turn around and scream to us, right? The Republicans are denying the SNAP benefit. They're actually going to do that if we attempted it, right? Just so freaking insufferable and insane. But, you know, there you essentially have it, guys. That's the Democrats for you. But let me know your thoughts. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and until next time, God bless and peace.